Good evening, folks, and welcome to Gang of Three. Three people from the OBR talking football or talking about whatever that was that we witnessed yesterday at Ford Field. We've got a variety of things to talk about today. First up, Pete Smith. How you doing, Pete?
I'm all right. I suppose better than the Browns.
Yeah, well, pretty much have to be. Lane, how you doing, buddy?
Another happy Monday.
Another happy Monday here in Cleveland. A lot of things to talk about today. If you are visiting us on YouTube or Twitch, please feel free to comment. We see all your comments. We'll put some on screen, so it's more than three guys talking. It's three guys and whoever wants to chat with us talking during the course of the show, and we'll pick out stuff that we want to get into. Big day today, guys. Trade for Cam Robinson, but let's talk. We got to lead with the elephant in the room, and that elephant is well over 6 foot. His name is Joe Flacco, and he's leading one of the most historically ineffective offenses ever seen. Pete, I read that Joe Flacco's expected points added per dropback is minus 32. I don't know what that means, but it sounds really bad. How much of this is on Flacco, in your opinion?
Certainly he owns his share of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, the offensive line was putrid, and he was getting absolutely mauled over the course of the game, really these past two games. Having said that, there are times when they're calling protections that call for him to get the ball out. He's not. He's holding onto the ball longer than he should and taking hits that he shouldn't. And then there are times where he's not seeing the field as well. He's missing opportunities, or he's not getting his eyes to the appropriate place. I think one of the things that in this game in particular, to contrast him against Jared Goff, I don't think Jared Goff played a particularly good game, and that's the Browns defense will do that. But what Jared Goff did that Joe Flacco didn't do was he got out of bad plays and just said, okay, you got me, or you got us on this one. I'm just going to throw it incomplete, and we're going to move on to the next one. And that happened on several drives where Jared Goff leaves the field frustrated but upright, and he took some hits, but ultimately he just stopped hurting. He prevented them from doing damage to themselves, really, outside of the interception, and just sort of allowed the Browns to eventually sort of, screw up in terms of turnovers and obviously the punt return later. So there's, to me, an element where Joe Flacco is, I think, wants to make plays badly enough that it's actually causing him to do more harm than good and actually make the situation worse.
I think it's very easy to look at the offense and point to the quarterback and say, hey, let's make a quarterback change. That'll change everything. And, of course, that was the first question from the media today to head coach Kevin Stefanski. Basically, Lane, Stefanski refused to say Flacco's my guy. He said a lot of things about it being more than one person and, the typical Stefanski coach speak. What are your suspicions about what's going on behind the scenes right now with the Browns?
Well, it's meeting Monday, so they're doing what they do. They're going to evaluate the game, the play, what they could have done better, and what they did wrong. Coming out of that, you shouldn't or can't expect the head coach to get up there on a podium or a press conference today and basically annihilate everything that they've done for the first 4 weeks at the quarterback, especially because that was the decision they went with. What we're gonna see as we go on this week, it is a short week, but it may not be the optimal time to potentially insert a new quarterback, also a new tackle. You're not sure if you're right tackle. I mean, right now I think they're in a decision mode, an organizational decision that he's meeting with his people, which are the general managers involved, and we're going to see a decision on what's going to happen going forward this week here in the next 24 hours.
Yeah. Pete, if you're in those meetings, what are the most important qualities of the quarterback that you're looking for at this point? Is it the ability to just get out of a huddle and call a play? Is it arm strength? What is guiding you right now? Is it all about mobility, like some people are saying when they want Gabriel? What are you thinking if you're the coaching staff?
No, the mobility thing, yes, it would help in certain situations and allow them to open up the playbook in some ways. But Lamar Jackson's the best athlete on the planet, and his offensive line, and in some ways himself, ultimately led to him being taken out of that game. And now he's got a hamstring injury, and maybe he'll play this week, maybe he won't. But you're just sort of living a lie at that point and saying that this is going to fix the problem, and it's not. Having said that, for what the Browns need right now, it comes down to processing and decision-making, understanding what the play needs, what needs to happen on a given play, operating on schedule. And when that doesn't happen, being able to then move on. And I think that's where the frustration lies from the coaching staff. And, Lane, I have to think just on my gut, I have to think that Joe Flacco is going to get the start this week. And the reason being is, one, it's awkward that you have to travel internationally. And two,
right,
whether or not you start Cam Robinson this week, I think both for Joe Flacco and the locker room, they're going to want to see Joe Flacco get to play with this tackle and some semblance of a better line before they just pull the trigger and basically go at this thing and say, we got you. Not even great tackle help, but mediocre would be a giant improvement from what they were getting the past 2 weeks. And you get the guy that could help you, and then don't let Flacco, the veteran, experience that when you are desperate. You do not want to pull the plug in so far as it makes it really difficult to go back to Joe Flacco like that. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's really difficult to go, we're going to put Dylan Gabriel in and see what he can do. And then, whether it's a week later or during the same game or whatever it is, then go back to the 40-year-old quarterback. I don't think the Browns want to pull that pin quite yet.
No, I don't think that's anything that they want to do. I think once they make the decision and make the move, that's the move. I think going backwards at that point would only be detrimental, within the locker room, because, when you replace the starter and you bring the rookie in, there's always going to be a perception that maybe you're raising the white flag a little bit. Veterans will start questioning that move and what's next. So to make that move, you have to be confident that that young guy is going to go in there and at least be functional. Inserting Dylan Gabriel into the mix now can open up the defense in a couple ways. It's going to be a step back in a couple ways. But if you can get a quarterback who can move, do boots, naked boots, rollouts, and have some movement in the pocket, it could help with that pass rush issue seeing. But now you're seeing that we're getting help at offensive tackle with Robinson. Conklin not that far off. There's an opportunity maybe they can go into this weekend and solidify themselves a little bit, because the one thing the Browns have done is that their win rate is good. They've just improved as they went along in their run rate. It's this pass rush. Your tackles are playing off, which is already, a step that a little detrimental when you can't block. So it's a situation. Short week by going to Europe may not be the wisest move, but it wouldn't surprise me either.
And you're going against a Flores defense and then a Tomlin defense after that. I would think would give them some pause.
Not only that, well, I mean, look, undoubtedly going against Flores' defense as a rookie is a nightmare.
Right.
Being a veteran, Joe Flacco, having the experience he has should help him. I was surprised at how well Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers handled it, given their issues. There are a lot of reasons this week that actually give me some hope that the Browns can actually do something weird and win. Part of it is because the Browns just, the slate just was a nightmare. They go from Trey Hendrickson to the Baltimore Ravens don't have a great pass rush, but the Browns just played really badly in that game. And then, so you go from Trey Hendrickson, who was in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. 2 weeks later, you get Micah Parsons, who's a favorite for the Defensive Player of the Year. And then this past week, Aiden Hutchinson, who's a favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. And the Browns had no answers for any of them. And they absolutely boat raced those tackles, which, look, I think Cornelius Lucas is far better than he looks based on who he's been going against. But they've literally moved Cornelius Lucas to whatever side their best pass rusher is in an effort to sort of like put a Band-Aid on this thing. Cam Robinson should have won. They're not playing against quite the same level of pass rusher as they've gone against, which is a break. And then the other part about that is Cam Robinson allows them to sort of plan better in terms of how they want to shift protection. They haven't really been able to slide their protection much at all, because who are you going to slide it to? You weren't going to slide it away from KT Leviston, who is, I have no ill will towards him, because this kid was brought in as a developmental player and the injuries just sort of dictated they put this kid on the field and said, do your best. So you weren't going to slide away from him. You certainly weren't going to slide away from Lucas when he's going against the premier pass rusher. So the Vikings are going to create a whole lot of different dynamics, and it's going to be challenging, but they don't have sort of that guy because they're missing Van Ginkel. They've got a guy in Jonathan Greenard who's pretty good, but he's not on that level. All of these things we'll see, at least provide the Browns an opening to sort of see what the offense is and at least give the Browns a sense that, one, I think they already know the answer to this. It goes well beyond Joe Flacco, but we're going to eliminate as many variables as possible to at least say, okay, he had protection and it's still not working. That is something we can at least hopefully cross off and then put that into evaluation. Whereas right now they have three things that aren't working, and pass protection, Joe Flacco, and then receivers not doing their part. And that all makes it very difficult to just say it's this guy's fault and we're going to put in a rookie quarterback and he's somehow going to fix it, because that's not realistic.
Well, that's a huge ask. And as you alluded to, when you have those offensive line protection problems, especially coming off the edge, it interrupts the timing at such a rate that you're seeing the issue. You're seeing that players aren't open when they could be, should be, or the quarterback can't stand in there long enough to throw somebody open or let something clear. And as long as that continues, this offense is going to continue to struggle in the same manner, no matter who's under center, because timing is such a critical aspect in this game. Defenses are bigger. Defenses are faster. They cover more ground. They scheme. They hide coverage better. And you see a veteran like Flacco, who could be a fluke full of times. You're going to throw a rookie in there and not expect that to not happen. That's unrealistic. So their best option is that hopefully these guys can get up there and line up at tackle and be at least average. If they get average play at tackle, this offense improves immediately. How much, we don't know, but we know that there will be improvement.
The other element that I think helps inform the Browns' decision on this is the first drive.
Yep.
Rehearsed, ready to go. The ball came out on time. Receivers caught the ball well, were open. And I don't know about well-oiled, but at least oil was in the machine.
Yep.
And they moved the ball down the field really well. The only thing that sort of slowed them down was, frankly, what I thought were bizarre choices to try to sneak Joe Flacco twice at the 1 yard line. But everything else they did worked. And, if you can get consistent tackle play, the offensive line held up pretty well in that first possession. If they can get something that resembles that more often, it doesn't even have to be all the time, because at some point, the pass rush should get there. But if they can get more of that, I think the Browns are probably, at least for the time being, going to talk themselves in the idea that was more indicative of what this thing can look like over the course of a full game. I genuinely believe if the Browns, obviously only getting 3 points the rest of the game really hurts you in terms of this argument. But I think the Browns look at this thing and go, or I should say, if the Browns don't get the touchdown the way they did in that first drive, I think this decision's a lot easier. But I think that's the part where they sort of hold back and say, when we had protection, Joe Flacco was good enough. The receivers were good enough, and we were able to move the ball. And by trying to eliminate this piece as best they can, I think it could make a difference. The thing that strikes me about this whole thing, I knowing the terms of the deal, what my immediate reaction is, what's the catch? Because it feels like the Browns got a gift. There are seemingly 24 teams that need tackle help. Yep. And the Browns gave up a 6th-round pick in 2 years for a 7th-round pick in 2 years. I couldn't believe that there wasn't more of a market for Cam Robinson.
That's what we went back to a couple weeks ago and told everybody at the OBR that they were actively looking for a tackle, somebody who was with experience, who could be starter quality. And it took a little while to get this deal done. Make a mistake. Cam Robinson isn't a world beater and is going to come in here and make you forget about upper echelon left tackle play. But what the guy can do is come in and play solid ball. He's a better pass protector than he is run blocker, which, considering what's been going on at left and right tackle, what's their left tackle position, if you get average run blocking production out of him, it's a plus. If you get that average plus pass protection, huge bonus. You just have to solidify that in a way where that the quarterback is comfortable and has enough time, and your play caller feels that they can get it done. Because there's, regardless of what's happened here in 4 weeks, in each game they've left just numerous opportunities on the field, and it's something that maybe that one count, that Flacco's vertical, will help them achieve. We're going to find out.
Here's a question I have, because one of the things that struck me on this deal, Cam Robinson's going to basically turn 30 in a week and a half.
Yep.
If he plays well enough, he's trying to angle for a new deal. Like, right. Ultimately, he's going to want to keep playing, I assume, even though he does at times have sort of that familiar Alabama lackadaisical effort that you're not always sure he's 1,000% interested, because the talent's there. But this does strike me as an interesting opportunity when the Browns, you're gonna go into this offseason with all 5 positions in flux. Yes, we hope Luke Whippler can be the center, but that still leaves you a whole lot of questions. If he plays well, is there a world where the Browns just say, why don't you just stick around for another year, even as we're going to try to overhaul this thing, and basically use him as the same insurance policy that the Houston Texans just did? Houston Texans acquired him this past offseason. Then they draft Ariante Ursary. Ursary ultimately wins the left tackle job, and then they, for whatever reason, decide to trade Cam Robinson, despite the fact, the Browns are only picking up $2.5 million of the bill. It seems to me like that gives you an opportunity to sort of give you some semblance of a veteran presence that you can put on a line next year if you get a whole bunch of young guys, or even if you don't, that may be able to fill a job as you try to sort of turn this thing over.
I believe that you're looking at it a way that they would look at it, to see what they have with a guy who's just going to be turning 30. If he comes in here and plays a solid left tackle, it's something that they could reasonably look at. I still expect them, when we get to the draft, that they're going to be looking at linemen. A tackle has just been a problem. But if he comes in and plays well, you could legitimately see them seriously consider a move as that, because what it does, you get an experienced guy who played at a plus level, helps solidify that, and opens up other opportunities for him. So I could see Robinson being a very, very interesting and intriguing player as we get through the season.
One of the things that I've been reading in the media a couple of times today, is the notion that exchanging Flacco for Gabriel is a fine idea because things can't get worse, right? I've seen that in posts in the forums. I've seen that in articles, some of them paywalled today. And we've been around here for 30 or 25 years watching this team since the expansion days. It can always get worse, and it often does for the Cleveland Browns. Pete, let me point it to you. Can the situation get worse if you put a rookie quarterback in, even if he's more mobile, even if he's got 64 games of experience at the college level?
Yeah, smash cut to Johnny Manziel prone laying on the field. I mean, that's the prime example of it, because that was the argument at the time. One, we want to see him, and two, it can't get worse. It absolutely got worse, and it can always get worse. Look, my argument when it comes to this whole situation is, look, I'm as curious as anybody what Dillon Gabriel can do, but I'm not at practice, and I'm not in the meetings, and I don't get to spend every day with this kid the way they do. I can evaluate Joe Flacco based on what I see, and I can say it's not good. But I can't sit here and then say to these guys who are there every day with these guys and go, I know that the guy I can't see and have only witnessed a little bit in preseason is absolutely going to be better than this guy, because that's just a guess. It's based on nothing. And the Browns don't operate that way, nor should they, nor should any team. No. You don't spend 60 and 70 hours a week to go, hey, what the hell? Let's see what he can do. That's what practice. I mean, this is the whole thing. You don't take a dump without a plan type thing. I don't want them to operate that way, and I certainly don't want the locker room to think they operate that way. The team around Dillon Gabriel needs to see that Dillon Gabriel can do it in practice, that he's handling in the meetings, that he's up to the task. Because if they don't, and it feels like you're just doing this to do it, then you get into a situation where Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio and these other guys sit there and look at side-eye and go, what am I doing here? Kevin Stefanski is not, say what you will about Kevin Stefanski. There are people who don't like him, and the same with Andrew Berry. These are not unserious people. They're going to go at this with looking at this from every angle. And at some point, we're eventually going to get there. But the bottom line is, when we looked at the schedule going into the season, we saw what was coming, and we said, there's a real chance this team could be 1-5 and 2, or 1-5 or 2-4 coming out of the first six. And the key was going to be stick together, get through it, and hopefully you improve enough that when you get to the other side, you can start, making a real difference. And certainly I understand if you watch this offense these first 4 weeks and you sit there and go, I'm not seeing anything that makes me believe that this thing's going to get better. I would argue that, one, we are seeing improvement. It's just very incremental. I think the running game is making good strides, and we're starting to see at least flashes of what the passing game can be, but obviously it's not enough. And then the level of opponent they're playing is making it that much harder. The problem is, I can't also say that I guarantee that when they get to Miami and New England and these other teams down, the lower part of the schedule in terms of opponent quality, that it's automatically going to be up and down the field either. I agree with the idea that you should see something that resembles more improvement than they're seeing. And that's ultimately why you make a deal for a guy like Cam Robinson. The Browns are not sitting around waiting. They want to get this thing going and try to figure out as best they can.
Yeah, Lane, what are you hearing from behind the scenes about Gabriel's development, Sanders' development? They chase the media from practices after stretching and all that sort of stuff. So we don't really get to see what's going on there. So what are you hearing?
I've been told that they believe that Dillon Gabriel can play. He can play now. They rather not have to be forced into that type of, because they feel that time will be beneficial. It's like you look around the league and you thrust rookie quarterbacks out there. and we're talking about a guy drafted in the 3rd round. We're not talking about a guy in the top 10 picks of the draft who are more of that upper echelon physically. But where this kid's got it, and they believe he's got it, and they see it, is that he processes quickly, and he holds guys accountable out there. You can bet your ass if he's under center and a receiver's running a bad route, he's going to be in that receiver's ass. That's who he is. He is a leader, and he can play this game. But to insert him, there's going to be some change within that offensive philosophy that will move him and move the line, move the pocket, and do some things to give him better viewpoints and them opportunities. The one difference that you're going to see when this young man gets on the field is when pressure is generated and there's no movement because Flacco just can't move. This kid has this innate ability that he goes from strict structure and he can play playground football. And that's where your receivers are going to have to be to the point in their development to know that you run the open. You got to give your quarterback opportunities. You see Browns receivers stop on routes, get lazy. That's a mindset. That's a coaching philosophy that has to change for the benefit of them today with who's under center and definitely who's going to be under center tomorrow.
Well, I mean, let's look at Isaiah Bond, who I'm famously Isaiah Bond skeptic, and he is doing things that are good. Certainly, he went up and got that ball, made a great play down the field. But a couple plays later, Flacco gives him a shot on the other side, and he doesn't go up for it. He just stops playing, and he's lucky that he's lucky that Amik Robertson dropped it because there was nothing stopping him from just intercepting the ball. And you saw Joe Flacco just glaring at him. The camera got a great shot of him close up looking at him. That's the mindset that they've got to get through. That's the rookie wall that they've got to get through. And that's one of the elements, that one of the moving parts that gives you pause to make a switch. It's also one of the things that's sort of holding this thing up is they've got guys who, get frustrated because let's use Jerry Jeudy as an example. There are times where I understand where Jerry Jeudy is frustrated. There was a ball to the sideline where Jerry Jeudy runs a great route. He gets open, and the ball is late, and it allows the DB to contest the play and ends up incomplete. I understand why Jerry Jeudy's frustrated. The problem is that he then can't make the play when Joe Flacco gets absolutely murdered after he throws a great ball as a Jets corner's hamstring is just basically pulled. That, not only would it have been a big play if he just caught the ball and extended the drive, and this was after the previous play where Harold Fannin couldn't track down another beautiful ball. But this is sort of the issue that they're running into. It's always something like there's always somebody that's wrong in these situations. In some cases, it's been Flacco. In some cases, it's been the receivers. In some cases, the protection. So that's where, just from my own standpoint, if you're going to put a rookie in there, I want him to be in the best possible position to succeed. I don't see that available to them right now. I'm hoping that with the adjustments they're making, bringing Cam Robinson, that hopefully Jack Conklin's going to be healthy. And I can't prove it, but there's part of me that thinks the Browns basically got to the game and said, or got to this week and said to themselves, look, Jack Conklin, is better off spending another week than potentially just getting boat raced by Aiden Hutchinson for 4 quarters. Let's just go with Cornelius Lucas there. It's going to be bad either way, and give Jack Conklin the benefit of one more week of rest because that might put him in a better health situation, and 2, just get him more prepared to play than trying to throw him out there in a situation where I think he was going to fail. So those things are going down. I think that will help certainly if they want to when they want to make that switch, but the receiver part's got to get there. And Dylan Gabriel, I don't know how he's repping in practice or any of that stuff, but hopefully he's doing everything he can to make those receivers believe that he's going to give them opportunities to get the ball, because I think there is at least, I don't want to say the receivers don't believe in Joe Flacco, but you can see the frustration when the ball's not getting where it's supposed to be on time. And you can see the frustration at times. I think Jerry Jeudy's the best example of this, is he at times is trying to do too much because he so desperately wants to be the hero. And I don't say that as a negative. I just think he just wants to win so badly that at times it seems like he's trying to make the play before he's caught the ball and go score or whatever before he's caught it, and it's getting him in trouble. And when they're flowing, when he's just sort of things are going well, you don't see that. You see him more focused, understanding that the opportunities are going to come his way. Where right now it feels like there's an element to this where if Jerry Jeudy feels like he has to score on every single play because he doesn't know when he's going to get another shot.
That was one of the big things we talked about when it came to Jerry Jeudy, and we alluded to last week or the week before, I don't remember, is that he wants the ball, he needs the ball, and he had a connection with, say, Jameis Winston, where Winston was going to get back and he was going to rip the thing downfield, and that ball was going to be in the close enough proximity for Jeudy to go and make a play. That's the thing that Jeudy wants. That's the thing that Jeudy needs. And that's what this Cleveland offense just has no ability to provide right now. And he's been known to be one who'll wander a little bit in his mindset and everything else, try to do too much, and then get discouraged because things aren't happening. That's what we knew about him, and that's what we're seeing about him on center stage now. Now he's pressing, he's trying to do everything he can or anything he can, and he's making mistakes just as well as the rest of the Cleveland offense does. The situation with the Cleveland offense is on just so many levels that you got to start at the rock bottom and start putting them together. If you get some stability in the offensive line, then where your quarterback play should improve. If your quarterback play isn't improving, then you got to make that move. But I think just starting at that base that they're attempting to do right now is the right building block and procedure to get them where they need to be.
Yeah, I can anticipate some of the comments that we're going to get on this show because you guys are being very logical. You're thinking like the coaches think, thinking about the pluses and minuses of making a change at quarterback, for instance. At the same time, even a guy like myself can recognize really bad football when he sees it, and we're seeing a really bad offense. Therefore, you think that quarterback change is the most likely thing. Can you explain to me, for example, Pete, the one Flacco interception where he hoisted a ball to Kirby Joseph with no wide receiver in sight? Is that a wide receiver issue? Is it a pressure issue? Can you tell me what the heck happened there?
Well, Joe Flacco took the blame for it. I'm sure Joe Flacco is covering for whoever. The problem you run into is on some of these plays, you get what are read plays. Based on what the receiver sees from the defensive back and what the quarterback sees from the defensive back, it becomes an if-then statement. For example, if the corner drops way back, it might tell the receiver, break your route short and run essentially a hitch or whatever, come back or something like that. And if the DB is playing a certain leverage, is playing tight, that might tell you then you're supposed to run a fade. So ultimately, I'm assuming that Joe Flacco saw something that told him this is a fade, and I got to get the ball out in a manner that's going to let a guy try to go high point it. Having said that, yeah, and it looks way worse. Obviously, he's throwing to nothing, but I don't know. I don't know how that ball was ever going to be caught based on the way he threw it, which is basically he was going to get drilled. He sort of threw it off his back foot, and you weren't sure if he would, people who were watching weren't sure if he was trying to just throw it away and it just didn't get there, or if he was trying to put the ball up and make a play. But I have little doubt that it was a misread, or a misread in terms of what the quarterback saw versus what the receiver saw in terms of where they ended up, because the receiver ended up running a hitch. What I saw anyway, cut the route short, and then Joe Flacco threw a ball that became a freebie to Kirby Joseph. I think it was ill-fated no matter what the receiver ran, but nevertheless, at least that would have given the receiver an opportunity to hopefully at least make sure it was incomplete. And that's, another one of the issues you're having where you have young receivers that don't know yet, or, some of these, Cedric Tillman famously, when he was coming out of college, never had to do anything like this. And it was a learning process for him to figure some of these things out. I wouldn't doubt that that's the same case for a guy like Isaiah Bond. He didn't run an extensive route tree, even though he played at two different colleges. They basically said, run down the field and get open, or it was manufactured touches. So he's having to learn all this stuff and figure it out on the fly.
Any thoughts, Blaine, on pointing that finger at Flacco on a play like that, or just the ramifications of other failures across the offense? I ask because Flacco is supposedly playing conservatively, but he still has 6 interceptions and 2 fumbles, right? He's playing to avoid the turnover, but he's still making turnovers.
Well, I think what's happening is that them wanting to play the game that way, and your quarterback in what you could call cautious mode for him, it's sort of taken some of who he is away. He's not the guy get back there and just rifling the ball for the place. It's like he's playing within a shell of himself, and that shell of himself could be that he's 40 years old and he just don't have that next hit. We don't know. But as far as the interceptions are concerned, coming into this game, there's a couple that off deflected passes and a couple really stupid throws. In this game, there definitely has a miscommunication between the wide receiver and the quarterback, because it was an entirely different thing. And then there was a pass later that, he threw a infield fly roll pop-up. So we don't really know what or who Joe Flacco is anymore. And there hasn't been an opportunity, except on a scripted first drive where Detroit was trying to figure out what Cleveland was going to do. And after that, it was just strictly done. They just demolished them. There's so many questions, and there's so many aspects that are playing into this thing. You just don't know. And that's why I keep coming back to trying to get stability and take the next step, because we just don't really know.
Right.
He's not making plays.
Last year, the team was unable to break 20 points. He started 0-6, I believe. Deshaun Watson was setting all kinds of negative records, for the Cleveland Browns. But this year it's the exact same thing, right? Is there any rethinking on how much of this was actually Watson's fault last year versus the components that were around him? Because the results seem exactly the same.
No, we're talking about 2 completely different offensive schemes from 2024 to 2025 to start with. So, it's not even a comparative value other than the Browns offense has basically sucked. It's been inefficient. Proficiency levels across the board are bad. Quarterback play was bad. Look at it this way. What did the offense do a year ago as far as maybe production or capitalizing on opportunities? What changed from Deshaun Watson to Jameis Winston? And a lot of the Browns' detriment under the Winston time was that he just started throwing interceptions at a mad rate. So from 24 to 25, you can't compare it. Now, if you want to look at Deshaun Watson in 2023, when there's some comparative value in the offenses, then you can take a look at it. But
yeah,
there's nothing much else there besides that. It's just an offense that needs to be efficient. And they have shown no ability to be proficient and execute in other than brief periods.
What Watson last year, when his first read wasn't there, dropped his eyes, tried to bet on athleticism he didn't have, and it was a disaster. Did not see the field well at all. Had no idea what to do with his with protection he had. No, I don't think those two things are comparable, even if the results are similar.
Fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about wide receiver and then a little bit about special teams and defense before we close up shop here. Wide receiver, Tillman supposedly out weeks with a hamstring. Jamari Thrash replaces him in the game, gets absolutely 0 targets. I'm not sure he wasn't getting separation, or was it he's running the wrong route, or whatever it is. How much confidence do you guys have that the Browns can put in a wide receiver, beyond Isaiah Bond and beyond Jerry Jeudy, who can make a difference this year? I'll send it to you, Pete.
Unclear at this point, because I don't know how much of it is Jamari Thrash versus Joe Flacco just doesn't look his way or trust him, because one of those things for dangerous sample size situation. Dylan Gabriel comes in and the first thing he does is throw to Jamari Thrash. That may simply be a comfort element. With that said, I'll be curious to see how the Browns decide to adjust here, because my immediate reaction might be, Jerry Jeudy could simply play more X. He's done that a good bit. The other thing they could do is there could be situations where if they want to move Jeudy, Harold Fannin could start playing some X. They've already done that anyway, but it just sort of changes up the way that they can use him and using some of these other receivers in roles, because it's certainly not to say that Jamari Thrash can't do it, but that's not really why they brought him here. So I think that's how it's going to look. But so much of it comes down to, is Joe Flacco willing to look at those guys? Is he willing to make the throws? And the answer to that has been unclear at this point. He's thrown one ball at Jamari Thrash that I know of, and that was against the Packers to help set up the field goal to win the game. So, it's very easy to say Jamari Thrash is unable, and that's certainly possible. It's just certainly the preseason is different than the regular season, but it's just strange that he had by most accounts, such a strong summer. We saw him do it in the preseason, and then the ball is not going anywhere near him. And again, a lot of that may come down to protection. Joe Flacco may not have time to get to Jamari Thrash in terms of the progression of the play, but that's where this whole thing starts, and we're going to see it. But if and when the Browns ultimately win, they make a switch, it'll be interesting, because you saw the same thing with. Let's go back to Baker Mayfield in 2020 or 2018 when he came in. He didn't rep with the ones. So when he came in, he found instant comfort with Rashard Higgins, because that's the guy he'd been throwing to all summer. So it may be a situation where Dylan Gabriel comes in and goes, I feel really comfortable throwing to Jamari Thrash, and suddenly those guys get it going. We shall see, but the injury to Tillman is going to put more of an emphasis on some of these things. But, beyond that, he's not really throwing the ball that much to David Njoku either.
No.
So that's the other part about this. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's shared responsibility. Receivers have to do their part, and Flacco certainly has to do his. And then the line's got to give them time to do either one.
Elaine, I had Njoku as a topic I wanted to speak about, simply because he hasn't been getting the ball as much as he had last year. You think this is a side effect of, Fannin's appearance on the stage, or is it other factors that are keeping David Njoku from putting up the numbers that we've typically seen from him?
Well, I believe he got a lot of coverage and role of coverage and how they're utilizing these guys. And Fannin does a very good job in what they asked him to do, and he's shown to hold the ball, and he's a comfort zone type of player from Flacco that we've seen. As far as David Njoku is concerned, if you watch the game and you go back and you look at it on 22 and you see where he's at, he's not getting those open looks that we've seen from him in the past. It seemed like there was less last year, and this year it seems in the same boat. He doesn't seem to create any separation. And it's a quick look to him when they throw him the ball, or it's almost a desperation type move where he's basically zoned in between two defenders. I'm not sure what the issue is with the Njoku. Is it a physical thing? Has he lost a little bit? Is the look going to him too late? We see everything that does come across from the hashes in is not really on time. So I question everything, and it comes back to timing. That this offense just isn't executing in any kind of proficient way to move forward. And that's an effect on the quarterback, the receiver play. Another question can be is, you don't see Dylan Sampson. You can put two running backs on the field and you can split him out and create some mismatches and opportunities. So there's so many things that they can do to change up the look of what they're doing, but they're having a problem doing their base look after an opening drive that they're just stumbling across every rock there is. And I'm not sure that we're going to see a positive development even this week.
Pete, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, some of this just comes down to the fact the Browns aren't running enough plays. You have all these things you want to do, and when you're punting after 3 plays, it's tough to get into all the things you want to do. That's part of it. I mean, the one thing they have going for them that's sort of helping them stabilize in some ways, and ultimately is where this offense is headed, is Quinshon Judkins. He's good. And not only that, Elaine mentioned it earlier, the run blocking is getting better, which is why I say, it's frustrating because you see 10 points again, and they don't score basically for 3 quarters. But the running game is getting better because teams know it's coming, and Quinshon Judkins and some of the concepts they're utilizing are still finding answers. In fact, up to this point, when the Browns had to sort of rush Quinshon Judkins into the lineup, they were utilizing him heavily on gap concepts. This past week, he got a whole lot more zone looks. And I have to say that, when I watched him in college, I didn't see a whole lot of creativity from Quinshon Judkins. I saw a guy who was very strong, had incredible athleticism, and would sort of maximize what you blocked for him. But he wasn't a guy that was just going to sort of create on his own. And he opened up my eyes on this in this week because, one, the Browns did some interesting things where they used Harold Fannin as a full. Like, at this point, make the play out of Harold Fannin because he just does everything. Those two right now are tone setters for this offense. They give you everything. They fight like hell for every single yard. And, Harold Fannin's averaging 40 yards a game, and it always feels like way more than that. Just the presence. I mean, another situation where, against the Packers, he catches a ball and fights 3 defenders and still gets the first down. This past week, he gets 3rd and 12. He catches what seems to be an innocent-looking 6-yard underneath pass. He turns around, fights 2 defenders, and gets 5 of them. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there at 4th and 1. And it's frustrating because the drive's over and they have to punt because they're on their own end. But that is sort of the element he brings. Quinshon Judkins has that same attitude. But anyway, they put Harold Fannin in the backfield and in inserts as a wing and sort of a sniffer type. And there are multiple times where it seemed like the Lions defense was keying on Harold Fannin and thinking that's where the play was going to go. So we're going to send all our guys there. And Quinshon Judkins basically just cut back using this to sort of open up the backside. And there were huge holes, or I should say basically walls for him to suddenly find a lane. And that is a level, something I have not seen him do in his collegiate career, which gets me excited about what he can be, because I always thought of him more of as a maximized linear player. And he's at least suggesting that there's more in there, which, given the fact that he's basically right now, arguably the best rookie running back in the league right now, averaging something like 4.13 yards after contact per carry, that if he has this other element to his game, that can really set these things up. So if they can get that going with consistency, and again, they've played some really good defenses. If they can start to get that consistently, and it can open up some play action and just some easier shots down the field. Like, for example, we saw this against the Lions And unfortunately, they couldn't make the catches. I already alluded to this. The back-to-back plays where Fannin couldn't track down the deep ball, and then Judy couldn't track down the deep ball. But with hopefully Cam Robinson and hopefully with Jack Conklin, if they are running the ball, they can protect even just even mediocre, it's going to give them more time to take shots down the field, which should open up some space on the offense. If teams want to play back, that's going to give them more running room. That's going to give them more passes underneath that whoever the quarterback is can hopefully pick them apart. But what we've seen so far, at least against the defensive they've played, the Packers and the Lions both tried to load up the box more, played their corners pretty honestly against the receivers, and that's going to give them the ability to take more shots down the field, which could, emphasis on could, help open things up. You're muted.
You're muted, Lane. But we'll let him figure out the mute situation. Are you there? Are you still muted? Maybe on the mic. Pete, you talked about punting. Punting was one of the reasons that score rolled up to 34-10 yesterday, as the Lions returned a punt for a touchdown. Another special teams failure on their part. Corey Bojorquez, that was not a very good looking punt. And if I remember, he got himself hurt a game or two ago. Do you think that has anything to do with the poor punt, or is it just a random event?
I can't know the answer to that, but Corey Bojorquez is a very good punter, but he's far from perfect, and he's had his fair share of shanks, and it seems like he just sort of we can hear you now. It seems like he has his share of punts that just don't do what he wants, and in this case, it seemed like they were trying to punt the punt in the corner, and for whatever reason, it was short, it was at a bad angle, and it just put the coverage in a bad situation. The coverage didn't respond well, and they gave up a touchdown. This is particularly problematic because of what the Browns want to be as a team. Their punt team is critical in terms of the field position game when you have this defense, and you're telling everybody, trust the defense, trust the defense, trust the defense. Don't make stupid mistakes. Don't risk everything and commit turnovers, because if you just punt it, our defense will take care of it. Well, against the Ravens, you have a blocked punt for a touchdown, and now you have a punt return touchdown. That's a huge problem. That's a bigger problem than Andre Schmidt missed, although he seems fine at this point. I'm not going to hold a 56-yard field goal against him. And the other elements certainly are not great in terms of the return game. But the one unit they have to be right on every single time is punt, because of everything they're putting into this thing. And until they can get this offense rolling, Corey Bojorquez and this unit have been great. Even in times in this game, they were great in terms of limiting returns and pinning the Lions deep. But that has been a critical element to their success when they've been good with this defense, is being able to rely on that, and to then give up so far 2 touchdowns on this. That's, of all the things on the special teams unit, that's the one where you immediately go, we've got to get this fixed somehow, some way, whatever it takes.
Fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. One of the things that I heard during the game, Lane, in our VIP thread, is that, the defense is exhausted. The defense is tired of being put in this situation. They're giving up. They're all that sort of stuff. Do you think there's any merit to that at all? We talked about it a lot last year when the defense seemed to struggle after so many ineffective offensive games by the Browns.
Well, at some point that may become some type of reality. Right now, that may just be a perception. You got to look at how many times, due to turnover and whatnot, the defense was put in a very negative situation where they had to cover a very short field and try to stop a very potent Lions offense. And the defense put their asses off, and they didn't give up. That unit, the way it's put together right now, they know what their role is. They know that they feel they have to go out there and win the game. And that's how they take it, and that's how they play snap by snap. They're hungry. We're 4 weeks in. Who knows what it's going to look like after 8 weeks. Team wins a couple games. Defense keeps playing well. Things can change. But it's not a give-up thing. It's not that they're not trying. It's not that they're taking plays off. They were put in a very, very bad situation again yesterday by Browns turnovers and poor special team play, and their backs were against the wall, and they held up pretty well. You look at it and say, well, these guys scored 34 points. They couldn't have played that well. But when you break it down and look what happened and how they got to 34 and how that defense have played overall, it's not a defensive issue.
Not at this time, certainly. Any thoughts, Pete?
I couldn't be more encouraged by what the defense is doing. I agree it's a perception thing, because even late in the fourth quarter, Myles Garrett chases down a run play from the backside. That wasn't a highlight sack he was trying to get. It was just playing hard and going after the run when the game was basically over. And they feed off him. The other part about that is there aren't that many veterans on the defense. It's Denzel Ward, it's Myles Garrett, Malik Collins, who's been here 5 minutes and is really good, but they don't Jerome Baker, Devin Bush, I guess. It's a whole bunch of young players that don't have the luxury of sitting there and pointing fingers and complaining, because they're trying to prove they belong in this league. They're trying to earn a contract. They don't have time to throw a hissy fit and go, the offense isn't scoring enough points, because they know this is a not for long league. And if I don't play well, there's enough talent where they will put me on the bench, because the Browns have enough talent and depth, particularly at defensive line and linebacker. They can move on to the next guy and be just fine. So it's competitive enough from that standpoint, and they haven't earned it enough yet. The other part about this, going into this season, other than maybe the Ravens, and even that didn't sort of work out the way I thought it would, there is no team offense, maybe in a world where J.J. McCarthy was really good and the Vikings offensive line was not completely injured. No team in this league on the Browns schedule has an offense that gives that has the matchup problems that the Lions offer. Between, we come into this season, we're sitting here going, oh no, slot corner is a huge problem. Well, okay, welcome Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is who plays I think something like 57% of his snaps on the slot. You immediately, and he's one of the best receivers in the league, and you immediately go, this is not good for the Browns. He had 70 yards, he had a couple of nice plays and touchdowns, but and given what the Browns have done, that feels like a lot. But it's not as if Amon St. Brown torched the Browns and it was endlessly, just him over and over again. They dealt pretty well with the combination of that, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams, and they're two running backs. And Penei Sewell is a huge advantage for the Lions, and one I was frankly very worried about, because he's just that good. And the broadcast framed it as running away from Myles Garrett, and I think in reality it was just when they ran behind Penei Sewell they had more success. But they still get overwhelmingly gashed. So if you look at this and you look at the score, it's not great, and they had a couple of explosive plays, which Jim Schwartz is going to have plenty to complain about from that standpoint. Jared Goff had 168 passing yards. They ran for I think 108 as a team. And yes, ultimately the game got out of hand, and they basically got to take their foot off the gas. But one, I think the Browns acquitted themselves well, partly because I thought the Browns would sort of change up their defense, and maybe they would have if things got bad. But they went in and said, we're going to at least see how it looks with our guys as is. And they played well. And particularly what stood out to me, and I think there's an element to this where the talent on the defense uplifts their guys and can make maybe a lesser player look better. But man, I am impressed with what I'm seeing from Miles Harden in terms of his attitude and just plays. There were multiple situations in the game where you see Miles Harden running step for step in man coverage with a receiver like Jameis Williams or something. There's no help there. It's just him. And this is a 7th round pick out of South Dakota. And at no point does he come off that way. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He plays with an attitude, and he just trusts his technique and he goes. And I have to think he's earning himself some trust with the coaching staff, and they're going to keep rolling him out there and seeing what he can do. But they're getting really good play. And, through that lens, at some point, the Browns defense is going to suck in a game, and they're just going to play badly and get beat. But just from a talent standpoint, if this group can stay healthy, you look at the rest of their schedule, I struggle to find a team that can do nearly the stuff schematically that a team like the Lions can do. And there are a whole bunch of offenses that are far, far worse. And you sit there and you lick your chops, even potentially this coming week. Granted, they have Justin Jefferson, they have Jordan Addison, they have Hawkinson, and those are really good players. But if this team is potentially down 3 of their 5 starting linemen and Carson Wentz is starting the game, you feel really good about your chances of that this can be an absolute just show for the Browns on the pass rush, given what they were able to do against the Packers and give us. I mean, they still got pressure against Jared Goff, and what has been easily the best offensive line they faced. So I don't love the result of the game, but I certainly feel encouraged about where the defense is going. And it's if they keep that going, they're going to continue to be in games, and ultimately they're going to win games.
Well, on that hopeful note, we will wrap up here. This has been Gang of 3. We'll be back next week at 7:15 to talk about whatever the heck happened in London. Hopefully, as Pete suggests, maybe they have a chance to take that one. We'll see. But we will see you again 7:15 next Monday. Thanks for hanging out with us. For Pete Smith and Lane Adkins, I'm Barry McBride. Good night, everybody. Appreciate it.